This is actually another piece of Indiana history, except it's also a piece of United States history. The American Revolution, of course, was fought with redcoats on the one side and the Continental soldiers and their allies on the other. And all of the big battles containing thousands of people raged up and down the eastern seaboard in the eastern states. Meanwhile, west of the mountains, the fate of the colonies and later the nation were decided by groups of men who numbered in the dozens rather than the thousands. And this is a story about the men of George Rogers Clark. I had a wife and children once, but lost them when the Shawnee came. I found their bodies after it was dark. Their scalps had gone up to Detroit, paid for by General Hamilton. I dug my graves and oiled my gun and joined with Colonel Clark. Winter 1778, we lost Fort Sackville to the Brits. They captured Captain Helm, who wouldn't flee. The 5th of February, Colonel Clark marched from Kaskaskia with 30 frogs, 130 riflemen and me. We'd had a rainy winter with 6 more weeks at least to spring. The roads were bad, the river fords were worse. They told us tents were coming with our extra shot and powder, and we thought of that and lay in mud and dozed off with a curse. Our supplies still hadn't found us by the dawn of February 12th. 60 miles and weather turning cold. We killed and ate some buffalo. We gorged until we nearly burst, then faced a 5-mile lake where once the little Wabash flowed. We built us a canoe. It was a dugout, green and heavy. My hands were sore until they got too numb. What supplies we had went in her, and we marched and splashed and waited. When it got too deep, we had to float the drummer on his drum. Wet and bitter cold it was, our buckskins rotting off our legs. We covered 50 miles and took 5 days. We stopped and took a breather, and we heard the morning cannon from the fort we'd come to capture, still 9 bitter miles away. We worked on more canoes, while those who rested sat like dead men, no food to eat and running out of strength. We waylaid 5 French hunters who we pumped for information. Then we waded to our armpits and began the final length. The weakest crowded in the boats, the rest of us just suffered, our bellies empty save for guts and gall. With muscles screaming, holding long guns up out of the water, but not a man dropped out, by God, and none was left to fall. We ghosted through the village, and the Frenchmen gave us shelter, along with ball and powder from their store. Then we crept inside the cannon's reach and took up our positions. Open fire, started howling like the starving wolves we were. A cannon roared, but long before the gunners closed the gun port, we taught them what they really had to fear. Pennsylvania gunsmiths make the finest rifles in the world. I drew a bead and fired, and a gunner lost an ear. We harried them throughout the night and through the early morning, then caught a Frenchman sneaking from the field. The Indian agent Maisonville, who'd paid to have our families killed, we stood him up and used him as a rifle rest and shield. Late morning they stopped shooting, and Colonel Clark he started in with threat and bluff and iron firm demand. By evening General Hamilton decided to surrender, and a freezing bunch of scarecrows won a country's worth of land. We occupied Fort Sackville, and we hauled down all the Union Jacks. American and Virginian colors flew. The British could not credit we were all the army that there was. And then I found a fire, and I ate a lot of stew. I had a wife and children once, but lost them when the Shawnee came. I found their bodies after it was dark. Their scalps had gone up to Detroit, paid for by General Hamilton. I dug my graves and oiled my gun and joined with Colonel Clark.